measures of central tendency. There are three main measures of central tendency. That's finding out where the middle of the data is. The one that you are most familiar with is not the mode, even though that's the one we're doing first. The mean is the one you're most familiar with. That's like just finding the average of something. Okay? The mode is the one that happens the most. Okay? Here's an example of the difference between mean, median, and mode. Let's say I have hired all of you to work for my company. And when you're like, I don't know, Mr. JR, if I want to work for your company, I say, oh, it's pretty good. 2, 4, 12, 14, 16 of you. I say, they say, well, what's the average salary? I say, the average salary is $1 million a year. Like, whoa. Yeah, I want to work for you. So you come on, you're like, when do we get paid? You get paid at the end of the year. Oh, that sucks. You have to work a whole year until you get paid at the end of the year. And you get paid at the end of the year, and what did I tell you as a central tendency? I told you the mean. The average person makes $1 million, right? That means I have to pay out $16 million a year, okay? You get to the end of the year, Ian gets his paycheck, $1. Enoch gets his paycheck, $1. Everybody's getting everybody's going around. You get your paycheck, you get your paycheck. Everybody's like, yeah, we all got $1. Adrian looks at his, he's like, oh, I'm not going to make very many friends. What's your paycheck? $15,999,985. Now, if I add them all up, his paycheck of almost $16 million, and everybody else's of $1, it adds up to $16 million. Divided by 16 people, the average salary is $1 million if we do it that way. But if you would have asked, what's the mode? What salary happens the most? I'd have to say $1. Most people are making $1 working for your company? That's not, right? And then what would I do? Be a mean boss? I make life really hard on Adrian for the last 2 months of the year, so he quits. I don't have to pay him. I have a little small print in my contract. If you quit before the year, I don't have to pay you. So everybody else makes $1. That would be bad, right? It also would be not very good to pay someone $15 million. I don't know what kind of company I would have to have. Anyways, that's the mode. The mode is easy to remember because mode happens the most. That would work, right? So if you're finding the mode or the median or the mean, sometimes it makes sense to take your data and rewrite it in order from smallest to biggest. And if we write it in smallest to biggest, for this first one, which number happens the most? The 12. So we would say the mode is 12. What is the mode in this example, 2a? Now we've given a chart, we've got marks, and we got frequency. Which one happens the most? Well, the frequency says the 50 happened 12 times. That will be your mode. If you were writing out the data points in order, you would have to write the number 50 12 times. Then you'd have to write the number 60 10 times, and so on and so forth. Here we would call something the modal class because it's not a single number, but it's a class of numbers, a grouping of numbers. Which one happens the most? The 70 to 80. This is called a grouped frequency table because certain numbers are grouped together and then their frequency is counted. Next, the one you're most familiar with, the mean. That's where you just add everything up and divide by the number of items that you have, right? You want to find your average. You've written 7 tests. You add up all your test scores, divide by 7. That gives you your average. This is the average you've dealt with most of the time. We get some fancy IB stuff. The mean, the symbol for the mean, is the Greek letter mu. Very fun Greek letter. Okay? Sometimes you'll also see an X with a bar over top of it for the mean. So we've got a population mean. That's the average of the entire population. And a sample mean saying that is the average of a small sample. Okay? So if I wanted to find the average height of this class, if I wanted the population mean, I'd have to measure everybody and then get the average. If I wanted a sample mean, I'm just taking part of you and getting the average and saying, I think that this is the average for my class. When do you use samples? Well, when the population is too big to ask for everybody. Ooh, IB marks from 1 to 7. Nobody got a 1. 2 people got a 2. 4 people got a 2. 6 people got a 3. 8 people got a 5. 6 people got a 6. 6 people got a 7. And they say that the average of the class was 4.6. Find the value of k, and then once you found the value of k, write down the mode. Okay, try it quick. See if you can come up with a method for figuring out the value of k. What would you do? Yes. Okay, I'm going to show you step 1 to see if you're on the right track. Did you decide to add them all up? 1 0 times, 2 4 times, 3 6 times. You would have 4 k times. Divided by the total, that would find your average. The total, there's 30 plus k. If we simplify that, which this is where it's nice to copy notes, I know that you can do 5 times 8 and 6 times 6 and add those up. I'm going to tell you that if you added up all the numbers, it's 144, and you would still have 4k. And then you have a fraction. How do you solve math with fractions? We could multiply to get rid of the fraction. And then again, distribute the 4.6, gather your like terms, solve for k, and k ends up being 10. So you're going to find sometimes with a question like this one. I gave you time to get it started. That's usually the hardest part of a question. That's the part that causes the most thinking. How would I start this? Once we get it started, especially in statistics, there's just a lot of calculations and counting and math to do that takes time. But this part, now that you're in grade 12 IB math, is like, yeah, I know how to do that. It's not hard. It's just time consuming. Now that we've got a value of k is 10, okay, if you didn't get it all copied down, just do ... k equals 10, because you could do that math, right? It's not something, the start is important. We got the answer. Now that we know k is 10, we would know that the mode was 4. If it really bothers you that you didn't get everything written down, I made the videos too. You can go onto the video, pause it, quickly write it down after. Show it for a little bit longer. Don't want anybody too mad on like day 2. But again, we don't necessarily want to take a lot of time copying. We want to do more time thinking. So here we have a frequency table. You're working for the biology department at the University of Manitoba, and you have measured the lengths of stems of 35 plants. Very fun job, measuring plants. And recorded to the nearest 5 centimeters. This doesn't feel like very accurate science experiment. That's a big range. But you're like, ah, whatever. That's close enough. And you've got 6 that were close to 10 centimeters, 12 close to 15 centimeters, 13 close to 20 centimeters, and 4 close to 25 centimeters. So we have the following table made up. Does the table make sense? There's the length, there's the frequency. If you added all of those up, you would get 60. 6 of them at 10, 12 of them there, adding them all up. Notation-wise, from grade 12 and grade 11, do you remember the big sigma sign means sum? Have you seen that symbol before? Maybe some of you haven't. Everybody's yes? Okay. If I add up, F is for my frequencies. If I add up the frequencies, 6 with 12, 18 plus 13, 31 plus 4, 35. So does that notation make sense now that it's been explained? And if you summed up all of the frequency times by the length, you get 600. Why is there a little I there? They might say this is the first one. So that would be F1, X1. This is the second one, F2 times X2. And so that notation is just saying if we needed to decipher which one we're talking about, that's what it would look like. And after adding up all of them, you get 600. How do we find a mean, an average? Find an average by adding them all up. That was done right here. Dividing by how many you have, that's done right there. So if I take 600 and divide by 35, you don't have to write this part down. There we go. 600 divide by 35. Gives you your answer. Make sense? Yeah. How is that for a formula, though? Not nice? So, do you have to know this formula? No. But this is, when you get to complicated data and you need to make formulas, sometimes the formulas don't look nice. What is this saying? It's saying you need to add up each frequency times each value. as many items as you have. So this I goes from 1 to n, saying in our example we had 4 datas in our frequency table. It would be from 1 to 4. You do the first one, the frequency times the number, plus the second one, the frequency times the number, plus the third one, frequency times the number, plus the fourth one, frequency times the number. Writing that as a formula doesn't look nice. Then you divide by, to find the mean, the total that you have. What's the total that we have? Just adding up all the frequencies. Again, this I to n says for us would be 1 to 4. Add frequency 1 plus frequency 2 plus frequency 3 plus frequency 4. Okay? Sometimes math isn't hard, but looks hard. And that's very fun math to know. Because if you know the math that isn't hard, that looks hard, when someone looks at your notes and they see this, they get scared. And you're like, oh no, it's not that bad. Like, no. So it's kind of fun to know math that looks hard but isn't hard. We could use our graphing calculator to check. We could put this into list 1 and this into list 2. You haven't used your stats graphing calculator very much, so let's just review that quickly, how we do that. You hit the stat button, and something should happen very quickly. There we go. You hit edit, and then you can enter the 10, 15, 25 into list 1, the frequencies into list 2. If you want to delete data, do not hit the delete button. It erases list 1 completely. Well, not completely, but enough that makes you mad. Hit clear and then down. So if you want to get rid of data, you can hit clear and then down. And then we can go 10, 15, 20, 25, and put our frequencies in 6, 12, 13, 4. 6, 12, 13, 4. If I want to do calculations with this, I can, so second quit to clear out of the screen. I can go to stat. I can go to calculate. I can, on number 1 variable statistics, push enter. Newer calculators come up with this menu. Older calculators just say 1 var stats, and then you have to go list 1, comma, list 2. In the newer calculators, it says, where's your list? My list is in list 1. Where's your frequency? My frequency is in list 2. Then I push calculate. And my 17.1 shows up right there, along with a bunch of other data. Okay? Estimating the mean of this data. So the frequency from 60 to 70 was 3. The midpoint, anytime they give you a range of data, you're always going to use the midpoint to help figure out the mean. $365 is $495. Filling in your data, adding them all up gets you to 1880. So dividing this gives us 94. We would use approximation sign because when you use the midpoint, you're not using the actual data points. You are approximating all the way through. So I want you to try example 4 on your own. Actually, I think we're ready. You guys can work on the next couple. I'll do 5. I'll show you the answers for 5. But try number 4. If you get number 4 done, you can move on to 5 or 6 or 7. Mm-hmm. 3 times is 195. It was a 1. I wrote 495? Oh, it's supposed to be 195. Yes, thank you for noticing that. Is the adding all wrong as a result? Okay, so that whole question is wrong. Perfect. Does it matter? Yes, but no. Yeah, what did the average come out to? Now I'm curious about it. Okay. Yeah, this should have told me something was wrong. Because look at, where would you guess the data average to be? Probably right in here somewhere, around 80-ish. To get 94 should have told me something is completely wrong. This was 195, not 495, which takes off 300, which would give us, unless there's other mistakes. Does it make 79? That's good mental math. That makes more sense. Thank you for noticing. Anybody want to guess what mental math strategy I did to figure out that it was 15 less? I took off 300. 300 on average divided by 20 is taking off 15 on average. I thought that was easier mental math than trying to do 1580 divided by 20, which isn't so bad either. Okay, so part 1, that was relatively straightforward. You got the 49.6. Now, if 2 new students added, what's the new mean? Well, you had 2230, but now you've added the 37 and the 30, and you were dividing by 45. Does it make sense you would now divide by 47? That would be an interesting experiment to do for a class. We write our statistics test, and everybody gets the class average. Yeah, that would be, what would that do to you as a class? Would you start getting angry at people that weren't doing their work? Or would you be like, okay guys, let's work together? Would you think people would help people more? Oh, thank you. Oh yeah, does anybody else have this done? That would be great. Okay. There you go. You're welcome. Thank you. Yes, if you have your preview sheet done, I'll grab those. Thank you. Enoch, I can grab that. But it makes, your face was perfect, right? You wouldn't, generally, people wouldn't like that. They wouldn't like to be like, that's not fair. Sometimes you'd probably, like if it's in a unit you're really bad at and everybody else is really good, you'd be like, oh, that's not bad. But if you were like, I don't know, interesting social, I'm not allowed to do it, don't worry. I'm not going to. You can just imagine things and what they would do. All right, for this one, hopefully I've multiplied them correctly this time. I'll give you the tallies to save you some time. And if you'd filled out the chart just by multiplying and adding things up, then finding the mean would just be dividing. So that one I wanted to show the answers to you so that you didn't have to spend a lot of time, but I do want you to think about number 6. Because this is maybe something you've thought about at times. What do I need to get on this test to make my average something? It's annoying, those little notifications coming up in the bottom. And then they get recorded, so if there was something sensitive, like, do you teach Ian? I'm so frustrated with that kid. And it's like, oh, I just put that on the video. That would be bad. I just get those like a couple times a week. It's not as bad as last year. I'm kidding. Again, the startup is the most important thing. So if you were, I give you some time, were you able to come up with this as an idea? I changed it to decimals. You could have kept it as whole numbers. That might even be nicer to write 70 plus 75, blah, blah, blah. But I added an X, because I need to get something on the last test, and then I'll have 6 tests that average out to 80. Now it's just a matter of simple calculations. 6 times 8 gives me 4.8. Adding these up gives 3.82. Can I get X by itself? Yes. Then the disappointing news. You need to get 98% on the last test to get the 80. That would be disappointing because you're kind of hoping that it would be like 87 or 85. Oh, unfortunate. Okay? And that sometimes when they had exams and exams were a certain percentage, right? There would be those students that were really happy because they did the calculations and they were like, huh, if I get a 0 on my exam, I still pass the course. Right? And some of you not, yeah, I remember that, right? The flip side has also been true sometimes, where the student's like, yeah, if you get 100 on your test, you will still not pass. Yeah, it's like, oh no. Then you're quite a bit lower than the 50% going in. So this isn't looking good. Again, read through it, see if you can get the setup. If you want to do more calculations after that, that's fine. But for each of these, yeah, see if you can get the setup. If you get the setup for number 7, go on to number 8. See if you can get the setup for that one. They can have a minute. Okay, how is the setup? Does it make sense that would be 9 of them at 630 and 3 of them at 810, giving you an average of 675? Why more accidents from October to December? Snow. Right? And then by January, it slows down because people are like, oh, there's snow. They figured that out. I have to slow down. But before that, they're like, oh, don't know what this stuff is. Well, it's because they're overloaded with homework and they're not used to it. So then they make more accidents, students. And then by January, they're like, oh, we're going to get homework. I'm used to it. All right, how did you do with the setup? Not bad. On Thursday, I've got an activity. We're going to work in groups, get to do some math on our own, dealing with mean, median, and mode, where you get to see some harder, like, remember how I said sometimes they make those questions to really push people? We'll see what they look like with mean, median, and mode. So we'll get some challenging questions, but you'll get to do them in smaller groups. Next one is the median. If you arrange all the data in order from smallest to biggest, the one that is exactly in the middle will be the median. So what that means is you're going to have to arrange things 5, 7, 9, 9, 11, 11, 15, 16, 23. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 numbers. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 8, 9 numbers. So that's a check that I do when I'm arranging them. It's easy to miss a number. If there are 9 numbers, which number is in the middle? Can you see the 5th one is directly in the middle? There'd be 4 on this side and 4 on this side. So if I count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, that's my median. My median would be 11. For those of you working for my company, the median would have been $1. The person in the middle of my company was making $1. So that would have sent some warning bells if you knew all three. The average salary is $1 million. Sounds good. The median is $1. Ooh. Right? And then the mode was also $1. It'd be even worse if I included my own salary. Then you'd be like, oh, you're the one making the $15,999,000. Now, when you have an even number of data points, so if we rearrange this one, 17, 22, 28, 30, 50, and 54, 6 data points, there's no middle, because 28 isn't in the middle, because there'd be 3 on the right and 2 on the left. 30 is not in the middle, because there'd be 2 on the right and 3 on the left. Then your median is the average of the 2 on either side of where the middle would be. So sometimes the median is with an odd number. There's one you can find perfectly and just say, it's 11. And sometimes you have to find the average of the ones on either side. And here I just quickly average of 28 and 30 would be 29. It's right in the middle. All right, so here is our first problem-solving question. This has come up on old IB exams. They give us 4 numbers. P is the smallest, S is the biggest. And do we know what this notation means? Do you remember what the fancy Z was? The natural numbers. It's actually natural numbers in IB. They put a little plus sign there just to say that it's the positive ones. When they have all of them, they actually mean the positive and negative whole numbers, which is the integers. Okay, so these have to be whole numbers. We know that the mean of the 4 numbers is 8. The mode is 7. The median is 7. And the range is 8. Okay? We've talked about all of these words except for the last one. You've talked about range in math often with graphs, like where do the y values go from the smallest value to the biggest value. In statistics, they don't say a range from smallest value to biggest value, but they just tell you what the difference between them is. So if I went from 2 to 10, my range would be 8. If I went from 3 to 11, my range would be 8. So it's just telling you the difference between the maximum and the minimum value. Okay, a little bit of problem solving here. What could you figure out? Yeah, work with the person beside you. Or if yours, like, what do we got? You can make a little group of 3 here, group of 3 here, group of 3 here, group of 2, group of 3, group of 2. Work in your small group, see what you find. right? If the median is 7, then the average of these two has to be 7. If the mode is 7, those both have to be 7s. That would be our starting point. And then we could guess and check, right, to figure out what the total is. But we could also use some algebra to do that as well. So if you guessed and checked, you found out, what was the first number? 5, and the last number? 13. Did anybody do any kind of strategic guessing and checking, where you're kind of guessed and checked, but at the same time used a little bit of strategy? What was that strategy? They had to equal 18 because it needed to, total needed to add up to 32. So you needed two things that added to 18, but there was a difference of 8 between them. So then that helped you narrow it down, okay? Did anybody do an algebra way to solve it? Okay? If you're going to do algebra to solve something, you're going to need x somewhere. Now, if I chose x here, this is a different number, so I can't put x there. I could either put y, but then I have two variables. Does it make sense that I could call this one x plus 8? That gives me some algebra. And if I have algebra, then if you use the fact that these two have to add up to 18, then x plus 8 have to equal 18, ... It doesn't take too long to solve that x is equal to 5. And then you've got algebra telling your answer. The nice thing about algebra telling your answer is the algebra would work even if I gave you numbers like, oh, the mean is 6.93, and everything else was the same. We could still solve it. Okay, good. Next problem solving. Same groups. All right, how are things going? Did we discover that P had to be less than 10? Why? The mode is 2. So P can't be bigger than 10. So now we know that P is anywhere from 0 to 9. There are 15 numbers here, and there are 8 numbers that are 4 and 5. Okay? Which gives us 23 numbers plus P. If the median is 3, that means the middle value has to be right here. Okay? And the middle value has to be 16 or bigger. Does that make sense? So if the middle value has to be 16, like it can't even be the average of 15 and 16. We need, wow. We need 31 or more, what are they, students. If I have 31, the median would be 16. Little formula for the median. will always be the position of the median. If I have 31, 31 plus 1 is 32, divided by 2, the median will be the 16th one. Can you visualize having 15 over here, 15 over here? That's 30. 1 in the middle. 16th one will be the median. So if you need 31 or more, and we're at 23, P has to be bigger than or equal to 8. So taking both of those things into consideration tells us that P has to be 8 or 9. And if you do check with that, everything is still true. Another one to try, pretty similar to one we did before. All right, how did you do on number 4? I did the algebra way. I used A, but you could use X and X plus 10. Oh, and you can't see the answer. So A is 3. B was 11. That means C was 13. And the last one. In order to figure out the median, we have to count how many there are in total. So counting how many are in total gives us 75. The median will be the 38th one. Anytime you have an odd number, the median will always work out to a nice number. The formula for finding the median is how many numbers you have, add 1, and divide by 2. If you have an even number, like if you had 10 things, add 1, divide by 2 gives you 5.5. That tells you you have to find the average of the 5th and the 6th one. Then, where is the 38th one? Well, we're at 5. Here we're at 14. Add another 16, you're at 30. Add another 18, you're at 48. Well, that means the 38th one happened in this column. And then finding the mean is just annoying. Just have to do a lot of multiplying and adding. For the calculation. I hope that, like today, we got to do a little bit more math than last class. Next class is going to be all on you to do a bunch of math, which should be more fun. I'll put you into small groups again to work on questions like this. Add some challenge. It'll be a hand-in assignment. So we'll have tomorrow's class to work on that. Or not tomorrow, but Thursday. Awesome.